we are screening 70 to 80 winter barley varieties every year. 95% of them now at this point are BYDV tolerant. Okay, the flow of two-row BYDV tolerant varieties has increased greatly, and we have our first two-row BYDV variety called KWS Legendus. That's now in production. We've one seed crop of it this year. It looks extremely promising. Very good straw strength and very high KPH.
The successful management of a tillage farm, whether large or small, often comes down to small margins. You know your soils better than anyone, so you are best placed to choose the crop and the varieties that will perform best on your land. Do you know the varieties you're going to plant next year? You're listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. If you're enjoying the series, we'd really appreciate it if you could follow the podcast and leave a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. A farm growing 5 or 6 different crops can face 30 to 40 variety choices each season. Last year's experience helps, but seeing varieties in the field is invaluable. Last week I visited Goldcrop's trials in Dunleer, County Louth, and caught up with John Dunne, the Goldcrop's trial manager, to talk about how varieties are performing and what new varieties to look out for. I first asked John about what's new in the winter wheat varieties this year.
There is a good flow of new winter wheat varieties. For a few years, the whole market was, at an almost standstill in terms of new varieties coming through. And that has turned a corner, and there's a good flow of new varieties, and we've a number of them there. And then, not only was there that lull, but last year then that new race of yellow rust popped up and has become endemic now. It's everywhere. So that has affected a number of varieties also. But thankfully, the breeders that we're dealing with haven't been relying on that one source of genetic resistance, that YR15 gene. So we have a number of new varieties coming out that have other genetics at work against yellow rust. So we have a few new varieties coming through. I suppose the one on top of that board that we looked at earlier is one called WPB Fairview. So it's from a Dutch breeding company called Veersum. And I suppose we like it because I suppose, Michael, as somebody involved in selecting varieties, and particularly with winter wheat, I'm always selecting wheat varieties with the next wet harvest in mind. Sure. And I clearly remember 2012 and those other years where wheat sprouted, succumbed to fusarium, etc. And Fairview has a number of things that I like. Number one, yellow rust. It's superb in terms of yellow rust resistance.
That has more than one gene in it, John.
Oh yeah, multiple genes working together. It has very good lodging resistance, and it has superior grain quality to anything in the market. I suppose up till this point, the benchmark for KPH in winter wheat was Dawson, and it was a very high busheling variety. Fairview excels. It's even better than Dawson from a KPH point of view. So we're fast tracking it, Michael. Fairview actually got delayed for a year in official trials because there wasn't enough seed available for official trials. Because the Department of Agriculture require 100 kilograms for a new variety to go into recommended list trials, and the breeder actually just physically didn't have that amount. So it's not eligible for recommendation until autumn 2027, but because of those numerous reasons that we like the variety, we've actually fast-tracked it, and we've started seed production of it already.
So for the normal grower out there, will there be any of that seed this year?
There should be a small amount of it for this autumn.
Small this autumn, right. Yeah. So it's one to watch for, maybe one
Correct.
to watch for in the when farmers are maybe going and have a look at some of the variety trials and the department, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for it. One for the future, according to you, for sure. Now just looking down at that, it has excellent thing, but at the end of the day, we can't get away from Septoria.
Correct.
How does it fare in that? Yeah,
so Michael, being honest with you, it's middle of the road on Septoria. So it'll be scoring about a 5 out of 9 for Septoria, similar to Graham for that matter. And I suppose as you head further south down the country, that Septoria resistance becomes more important.
And it's a fast developer or slow developer?
So I suppose that's another point, Michael, and thanks for reminding me. We have grouped the varieties in terms of their speed of development, and we have a couple of varieties in the market that are slow developers, and they're useful if you're sowing early, the last days of September or something like that. So you've Hexton and you've Scope, which are very slow developing, but you wouldn't sow those late after potatoes in the end of October or into early November, because those slow developers can struggle in those scenarios. Whereas you fast developers then, like the likes of Rebellion, Fairview, and you could sow those into mid-October onwards, and they have that vigour to get up and away and get away from trouble. So
there's lower ones might be more. There's a lot of Mintel out there at the moment, and a lot of those guys want to get in that little bit earlier. Correct. They like to get in they probably actually like to sow wheat before they sow barley.
Yeah.
So they're in that bit earlier, if you know what I mean. So they're the slower developer ones, the ones we should be going
correct.
Going
they
for.
won't get too advanced. But these are important things to know, because a grower might want to grow winter wheat and mightn't have made up their mind what variety they're going to go with, and an opportunity occurs in late October to go and sow wheat. But you need to know what type of variety you want in that scenario, because that's a critical juncture, you know.
And I suppose the other side of that is that often growers in that type min-till scenario, sowing that a little bit earlier, I still like to see it tiller reasonably well to make sure it's competitive and that kind of stuff. So is there a few of those that kind of fall into that?
Yeah, like Hexton would be notable in terms of its tillering ability. So Hexton would be an ideal early sower and hasn't suffered from that breakdown to yellow rust like some other varieties. Let's
just go back. Let's just take a scenario. Growers out there, relatively big grower, let's just say, sowing, let's just take 300 acres of winter wheat, right? They're not going to sow all the one variety. Chances are there's a bit of spread on the land. Some of it is first wheat. Some of it might be a little bit of second wheat. Some of it's slightly earlier land. More of it's very heavy land. Just throw out, just from your point of view, obviously it's probably going to be your varieties, but from your point of view, what's the ideal type of mix of varieties that you would be inclined to put in there, to maybe with an eye to spreading the harvest a wee bit and that kind of thing as well?
And spread of harvest is an important point too, Michael. So I suppose in that theoretical situation, you know, if they're going to start sowing at the end of September, you'll probably pick something like Hexton or Scope, which are both very slow developing, and they'll tiller well. They won't get too advanced. And then as you head into first week of October, you've a wide choice at that point. Something like Fairview, which is medium to quick developing, you'll probably start that maybe around the 10th of October, 8th of October. Sure. And then as you get later, you'll certainly be steering towards something like Rebellion, which is quicker developing, but extremely vigorous, and will get up and get away. Okay. Because you know yourself, growth slows down rapidly as you progress.
And when you go up the other side of the year then, so one is slow, one's medium, one's fast in terms of putting it in the autumn time. Are they going to come in around the same time then in terms of harvest? Yeah, like you know yourself, and most people will know, like that a 2-week difference at sowing, all things being equal, won't be a 2-week difference at harvest. The thing funnels down to a tighter window at harvest. All things being equal, the Rebellion will still be a week earlier to ripen than the others. Okay. It will speed up and it will be earlier to ripen. So that's useful for spreading the harvest as well. Okay, very good.
Whereas something like Hexton will be later to ripen.
Right, okay, great.
Yeah, and just on that winter wheat, like you mentioned Septoria a while ago, like during the talk I just mentioned the level of testing we're doing for winter wheat, and you know, in 2021 we moved from screening probably 70 or 80 wheat varieties a year to currently we're at about 2,000 wheat varieties every year being screened. Okay. And I showed you another one that was there today. It's not at commercial level yet. Another one called KWS Checkmate, which looks to be scoring about a 7 for Septoria, 7 or 8 for yellow rust. Excellent grain quality, probably one of the most well-rounded varieties I've seen in my career, and that's coming out of that really intensive screening we're doing. It's early days with Checkmate. It won't be commercially available this year, but next autumn 27, hopefully.
So definitely one again for the variety trials. If you're out in the field, have a look, see what it looks like. I've seen it in the field and it looked very clean.
Yeah, and well tillered. Good. Yeah, and I suppose a few people have asked about BYDV. So this year we have put the first BYDV tolerant variety of winter wheat into the Department of Agriculture trials. So we're looking at that as well.
Okay, very good. And speaking of BYDV, people will be more used, I suppose, to winter barleys, who, you know, they generally have BYDV in them. What's new in the winter barley side of the house? I presume they're all BYDV.
Yeah.
Or resistant? Are we at resistance yet?
Look, some breeders are working with resistance as well. I suppose at the end of the day, I don't really mind once it has protection against BYDV. Sure. So I suppose at this point, Michael, we are screening 70 to 80 winter barley varieties every year. 95% of them now at this point are BYDV tolerant. Okay. The market, to start with, a number of years ago when BYDV tolerance came out first, it was French varieties. There were 6 rows, the likes of Joyo, the likes of Integral. But now the market and the breeders, I suppose, are coming around to the 2 rows. So that the flow of 2-row BYDV tolerant varieties has increased greatly. And we have our first 2-row BYDV variety called KWS Legendus. That's now in production. And we've one seed crop of it this year. It looks extremely promising, very good straw strength and very high KPH. So that's coming from KWS. And we've another one called Lemurus coming behind that. So that flow has started.
But let's just go back to some of the varieties people will recognise and probably going to be putting in this year. So the likes of the, say, Integral, Arcade, and TARDIS are probably some of the most popular varieties.
Correct.
They still the same amount of seed for next year. They'll still be the bulk of it.
Yeah, like TARDIS has reduced because it's not a BYDV tolerant, a very reliable variety, but doesn't have the BYDV genetics. So we've reduced that to about 6% of the National Assembly now. The largest single variety in the market is Arcade, but coming behind that is Organa, which has increased yield and very good straw strength. Organa's
2 row or 6 row?
2 row.
2 row.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so that's what's coming through. So the likes of, say, is there any other big disease thing to look out for? Say Integral and Jiu, that were probably a little bit susceptible to mildew along the way.
They have.
What about some of the new ones?
The new ones seem to be better in terms of disease resistance.
Okay.
Yes.
Better again.
Yeah, better again. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, okay, that's lots of good stuff coming through there.
Lots to be positive about in the winter barley now, in my view.
Right. And do you see any differential in terms of that earlier sowing kind of slot to go a bit earlier with some of them?
Yeah, like I suppose the first varieties to come through were those French 6 rows, and they were quite quick developing. And that's fine. But if you think about it, if you have a winter barley with BYDV tolerance, it probably tempts you to sow it earlier. So if you're sowing a quick developing variety early, that can let it get quite advanced. And when you get into the spring, you might be struggling to get on with nitrogen, or the nights are cold and you're trying to get on with PGR. The 2 rows, by their nature, are slower developing.
Yes.
And like the likes of those KWS ones, they're coming from the UK, a climate more similar to ourselves, so they're less inclined to take off. They're going to hang
so
out.
If you're going in slightly wetter ground, obviously maybe you shouldn't have barley in wetter ground, but that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Some of the 2 rows might be...
If you want to move earlier.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
A little bit better. Speaking about, going earlier and having to go early, you have some oilseed rape here on trial as well. And you were mentioning some of the varieties are a little bit more tolerant to slightly later application of nitrogen. Explain that? You might explain that a little bit more.
So I suppose in that I was referring primarily to Limagrain, who are probably I don't think it's definitely the most successful winter oilseed rape breeder in Europe. And not only are they topping the stakes in terms of yield, but they have a number of really good traits in their varieties, and they've been very progressive. They were the first to bring in turnip yellows virus resistance, which is more or less standard now across the varieties. But they have N-Flex, which you just mentioned there, Michael, which is N stands for nitrogen, and it's basically they have, I suppose, a greater flexibility in terms of spring nitrogen. So a variety with N-Flex in it, if the land is too wet and you can't get out, you have to wait another 2
years. Happens in February.
Certainly. And you're a fortnight to 3 weeks late getting on with your nitrogen. Those varieties don't seem to suffer as much. Okay. They seem to be a bit more tolerant to late nitrogen, which is a good thing to have. And then in addition, look, there's other traits coming through. Scleroflex is becoming more easily accessible. That's a tolerance and a reduction in sclerotinia levels in varieties. And look, our varieties Armada and Avenger are the only two varieties on the market with Scleroflex. And to me, that's almost an essential trait.
Okay. And I think given the price of where oilseed rape is today, I know it's come back a wee bit, but it's certainly good, I think. And I think there might be there might be more oilseed rape, I think, in the system. Next year, people might be looking at it. But obviously, in that type scenario, you're talking about sclerotinia, you need a rotation in with that, but obviously then you have club root as well.
Yeah.
Where do you see the rotation? Where's the slot in for it, and what's the distance between in terms of rotation?
I suppose, I would have always said the less often you grow any crop, the better it will do. Okay, and that applies to oilseed rape. And people who are growing oilseed rape a long time would always say rape will do best in land that hasn't had rape before. So there's a certain level of soil diseases building up, some of which we're familiar with, the likes of club root, sclerotinia, etc. But there's other things going on in the soil biome, in terms of fungi and things that are building up. So I personally speaking, and at home, I would go probably 1 year and 6.
Okay.
Now I've seen NIAB data from the UK to show that 1 year and 4 doesn't seem to be an issue, but I wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be looking for trouble, basically.
There's plenty of other things to put in the rotation.
There
anyway.
is.
There's beans and there's oats, and
correct.
there's various sort of different things to put into it.
And, Michael, you've hit on an interesting point because, and I have a page in the book, our Goldcrop book this year, on rotations and years to keep between successive crops. But whilst we rotate our cereals, we should be thinking about rotating our break crops as well. Not growing the oats too frequently, not growing the beans too frequently, or not growing the oilseed rape too frequently.
Probably where you should start, really, as much as anything else.
It probably
really
is. Yeah.
People often start with winter wheat, but it should be starting with oilseed rape.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
actually, in fairness, I think one of the most consistent and profitable crops over the last probably 10 years.
Yeah.
And actually, somebody was pointing out to me recently that if you can manage to get the winter growth in it, it actually is one of the more environmentally sound ones in terms of less nitrogen going
it's soaking it up, hoovering it up. Yeah. And it's a lot of work done early as well.
Exactly. So the mainstay of varieties in oilseed rape then this year? Yeah,
so Armada is our number one, and it's the one that was added to the Irish recommended list last week. It's now the highest yielding variety on the Irish recommended list at 106, and it has the full suite of traits. So you have your Scleraflex, you have your Enflex, you have turnip yellow's virus resistance, and you have pod shatter resistance, all in one variety.
Okay.
And the thing about it, Michael, is that if a farmer goes into a co-op in the morning, the Armada shouldn't be any more expensive than some of the other varieties. These traits, they're not charging extra for the traits. Yeah. So it's there to be used.
So, and I always find this difficult, I must admit, when I go to a crop of oilseed rape, now this time of the year, look into a crop of oilseed rape, not really sure what I should be looking for the most part. So when you were going in, give us a pointer in terms of you as a seed assembler, you're looking for these new varieties. What are you really looking for? What should growers be looking for if they're going to look at the Armadas and the various other different varieties that are there that might be on show over the next few weeks?
Yeah, well, I suppose I would always look where possible to try and get some Department of Agriculture trial information because it's independent and unbiased. Okay, so that would be a good, honest starting point. Then there's the traits. So in terms of oilseed rape, look at those traits. If you're looking at plots of oilseed rape, look at the stems. See how healthy and green they are looking. Okay, that's always a good point to look at because if a variety is weak on disease, be it light leaf spot or foma, you'll see a lot of staining on the stems. And
so it's the laddering effect and the kind of blackness on it.
Patchiness or blotching on the stems, for want of a better word. And then how well does it stand? Is it standing nicely? Okay, because number one, lodging is bad news because it'll hit your yield. But even from a harvest point of view, we've had varieties like Ambassador and now Armada, they stand beautifully for the combine. Yeah. So from a harvesting point of view, they're easier. So they'd be the main things you'd look at.
Okay. Yeah. John, we didn't get a chance to look at the spring barley or most of the spring crops just as it happens today because we were kind of rained out as much as anything else.
Yeah.
But in terms of the spring barleys, is there anything new? We mentioned BYDV stuff before. Yeah. Is there any of that coming through?
Yeah, like Secobra, one of our main barley breeders, they have BYDV tolerance in their breeding program now. And I would expect, if not spring 27, definitely spring 28, I'll be screening varieties of spring barley with BYDV tolerance. So
the farmer should see them in 2030 maybe?
Oh, it's on a bit then. Look, obviously they have to be right in all the other attributes like straw strength, etc.
A good ways to go still.
I suppose the spring barley market, it's the feed end of it is dominated by Hurler and the likes of Geraldine. They're really reliable, high-yielding feed varieties. And in the malting end of things, we have Belter coming through. And Belter has received full UK approval for both distilling and brewing. And that distilling announcement only came through a week or two ago. So there's good progress there as well.
Brilliant. Listen, John, thanks very much for your time.
You're welcome, Michael.
And we'll be chatting to you again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Michael.
So that's it for this episode, and my thanks to John for joining me on the show. Join me in a couple of weeks when I catch up with Goldcrop's seed plant manager, Jim Cunningham, to talk through how seed is processed and prepared for next season's plantings. So finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague. And as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy, thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.